Before we begin, take 1 second, breathe in, and if you love deep, emotional stories that stay with you long after they end, make sure you're subscribed. Stories like this don't just entertain, they change the way you see people. Now, let me tell you about the summer that quietly broke me and rebuilt me into someone new. It all began on a morning that felt far brighter than my anxious heart could handle. The Alaskan sun stretched endlessly across the sky, filling the world with warm light and crisp air. It was nothing like the dry heat of Amman, where I had spent my entire life. Everything here felt vast, untouched, and strangely comforting, as if the land itself knew nothing about my past, my fears, or the expectations I had carried for so many years. I had never imagined leaving home. My life had always been small but familiar, wrapped in family traditions, friendly neighbors, streets I knew by heart, and the evening call to prayer echoing between buildings. It was a life that felt safe. But sometimes life quietly leads us toward doors we never intended to open. The Martin family needed a nanny, and I needed work. At least, that's what I kept telling myself. The truth ran much deeper. I wasn't only chasing a paycheck, I was searching for dignity, independence, and proof that I could build a life on my own. At 33, unmarried, and determined to stand on my own feet, I had already become the subject of silent judgment back home. No one ever said the words aloud, but I saw them in their expressions and heard them in their whispers. A woman my age was expected to be someone's wife and someone's mother, not boarding a plane alone to begin a new life in another country. When I arrived at the Martin house, I could hardly believe my eyes. It was larger than any home I had ever entered. Polished marble floors reflected the sunlight, while towering windows flooded every room with warmth. It didn't simply feel like a beautiful house, it felt like an entirely different world. Emily Martin welcomed me at the door. She looked graceful and perfectly composed, the kind of woman who never appeared rushed. Her blonde hair was tied into a flawless bun, and every detail of her outfit looked as though it belonged in a fashion magazine. Yet her smile carried genuine warmth. "You must be Aaliyah," she said kindly, speaking my name as though it truly mattered. Standing quietly behind her was Ethan. He was tall and broad-shouldered, with sandy brown hair that curled naturally at the ends, as though he never bothered trying to tame it. Soft laugh lines framed his face, revealing someone who smiled more often than he frowned. He didn't say much that first day. Instead, he simply handed me a cup of tea and nodded politely. Oddly enough, that quiet gesture eased the nervousness I had been carrying since I arrived. Then the children arrived. Liam and Anna rushed into the room like tiny whirlwinds. They were only 5 and 3 years old, endlessly curious, endlessly energetic, with sticky fingers and enough questions to fill an entire day. I'd never worked professionally as a nanny before, but growing up as the oldest of 6 siblings had prepared me better than any formal training ever could. Emily seemed to recognize that immediately. She handed me a thick binder filled with schedules, meal plans, emergency contacts, laundry instructions, and even diagrams explaining exactly how everything should be folded. She wasn't controlling, she simply expressed her love through organization. The first few weeks disappeared into routine. Every morning began before sunrise with breakfast, getting the children ready for school, reading storybooks, cleaning finger paint from tables, walls, and occasionally my own clothes. Liam spent most afternoons racing across the backyard as though gravity simply didn't apply to him, asking endless questions, especially about my accent. Each night, I returned to my small room in the basement completely exhausted, yet strangely fulfilled. For the first time in my life, I felt valued because of who I was, not because I was someone's daughter or someone's sister, but simply because I was Aaliyah. About a month later, something quietly changed. Liam squeezed his juice box too hard, sending bright orange juice spilling across the kitchen floor. I knelt down to clean the mess when I suddenly felt someone's eyes on me. Ethan stood against the counter with his arms folded, watching with a gentle smile. "You're amazing with them," he said. The compliment itself wasn't extraordinary. It was the sincerity behind his voice that caught me off guard. "Thank you, sir," I answered automatically. He laughed softly. "Please, call me Ethan." From that day forward, I became aware of him in ways I hadn't before. He always asked whether I'd eaten. He quietly carried the heavy grocery bags before I even reached for them. Whenever I cooked, he'd find an excuse to remain in the kitchen, talking with me as though those conversations had become part of his daily routine. Emily, meanwhile, was traveling more frequently. Meetings, conferences, business trips, her schedule blurred into one long series of departures and arrivals. One evening, Ethan looked at me thoughtfully. "Don't you ever get tired?" "Tired of what?" I asked. "Doing everything for everyone." I simply shrugged. "It's what I'm used to." He looked at me for a long moment. "You shouldn't have to be." No one had ever spoken those words to me before. Where I came from, women were expected to give endlessly. Their sacrifices were ordinary. Their exhaustion was invisible. But Ethan noticed. And that frightened me. Because I knew exactly where the boundaries were. I knew my faith. I knew my values. I knew the promises I had made to myself. Yet loneliness speaks in whispers. And genuine appreciation can feel dangerously similar to love. Summer drifted by in long golden days. One rainy evening, after the children had fallen asleep, the house grew unusually quiet. Rain tapped gently against the windows while I washed dishes in the kitchen. Ethan joined me, his sleeves rolled to his elbows. We talked for hours about home, sacrifice, dreams we'd abandoned, and the different lives we thought we were supposed to live. "I see how much you give," he said quietly. His eyes lingered on mine just a little longer than they should have. In that silence, something invisible passed between us. Nothing dramatic. Nothing spoken. Just an understanding neither of us could deny. After that night, everything changed. Our conversations became softer. Our smiles lingered. Even silence carried a weight neither of us could explain. At the same time, guilt settled over me like a shadow, growing darker behind every shared glance. Whenever Emily returned from another business trip, reality returned with her. One clear night, I sat outside beneath a sky overflowing with stars, my scarf wrapped tightly around my shoulders against the cool air. Ethan quietly sat beside me. "We can't keep doing this," I whispered. For several seconds, he didn't answer. Then, with a voice that trembled, he said, "I love you." Those words didn't feel like a victory. They felt like everything collapsing. Because that love could only bring pain, to his family, to my faith, and to the woman I wanted to remain. The following week, I began searching for another job. Leaving Anna and Liam felt like someone was pulling a piece of my heart away. Emily hugged me tightly before I left, thanking me for everything I had done. Ethan didn't say a single word. But his eyes said goodbye in a language too painful for either of us to translate. Back in Amman, life moved at a gentler pace. Slowly, I began building something that truly belonged to me, a small community center where women could learn new skills, find employment, support one another, and discover independence they had never imagined possible. Little by little, I rebuilt the person I had almost lost. Then one quiet afternoon, someone softly called my name. I turned around. Emily stood in the doorway. She looked older than I remembered, but somehow gentler too. We spoke about the children, about life, and about everything that had changed. Finally, she took a slow breath. "I knew, even back then," she said. My heart nearly stopped. "I'm not here to blame you," she continued softly. "Life isn't as simple as people pretend it is. I only needed to see you one more time, so I could truly understand." My eyes filled with tears. "I'm so sorry." She gave me a small, peaceful smile. "I know." Then she added, "I've forgiven both of you." For a moment, forgiveness felt even heavier than anger. Before leaving, Emily looked around the community center and smiled. "You're doing something beautiful here. Don't let your past become the only thing people remember about you." After she walked away, I remained standing there for a very long time. That summer had once felt like an open wound. Now it felt like a scar. Still visible. Still part of me. But finally healed. I hadn't simply walked away from a beautiful house in Alaska. I had found the strength to walk back to myself.